With a couple of people in the room, fortunately, so I was excited to come present to you guys. I know there's a lot of interesting characters that attend this meeting, so.
Got that right.
Interesting's the nicest way I've heard it called.
Yeah. So again, my name is Mark Pytiak, and I'm here representing my company, Green Home Energy. As it states, we're a Consumers Energy, and I didn't have the DTE logo, but also a DTE trade ally in their home performance program. So the long and short of this whole presentation is that we make homes more energy efficient, more comfortable, and less costly to run from a utility standpoint. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So let's take a look at what we will cover. First, we'll just give you a little bit of background as to the principles and what really makes up the backbone of what we do every day. We'll talk about building science, kind of give you a crash course into the scientific principles that back up what we do. So some thermodynamics, insulation and air sealing, and how that applies to thermodynamics in the home, and then the principle of stack effect and how that really affects the comfort and the efficiency of your house. It sounds really boring, but it really does affect the efficiency and your utility bills in your home.
There's some engineers in there.
Okay, yeah, so you'll like it, right?
More thermal.
Yeah.
People ain't DTE.
Then we'll talk about the energy audit. This is the test we use to figure out how the home is performing, where the inefficiencies are. We'll cover the blower door test, thermal imaging, the CAS test, or combustion appliance zone, testing the mechanicals. We'll also go over the energy efficient upgrades that we do, the different types and different types of applications that we use, and then the credits and financing that are available from the utility and other financing programs to help you pay for some of these improvements. Also, at the end, we'll go over just an example of our work to give you an idea of what a typical project for us looks like. So, can't really see on top there, but this home as a system concept is really what's the backbone of everything that we do, and it's really what makes us different than your typical contractor. You may have a great, great plumber or a great heating and cooling contractor, but the difference between them and us is that when they install a furnace, that's where their area of expertise ends, and that's where it's done. When we go to install a furnace or put in a furnace, that's really where we start. We're going to look at 1,000,001 other things around the house to make sure that you're maximizing the investment of the furnace, and that this 95% efficient furnace is creating this heat efficiently, but then it's flying out your window on the other side of the register. So we want to make sure that all the different units, all the different mechanical units and systems within your home are individually working well, which like that HVAC guy may do, but we want to make sure that they're working well together. And it's when you get the synergy of systems in the house, that's when you really see high efficiency, high levels of comfort, and most importantly, low utility bills. And so that's, again, what kind of sets us apart. So when we're looking at the house, we're looking at a lot of interacting relationships. We're looking at the physical structure itself, how the house is put together, is it structurally sound, most importantly, but then how is that structure affecting the efficiency of the house, the mechanical system, so your heating, your cooling, electrical, plumbing, all that stuff, and how it's interacting together. The occupants, human behavior is one of the biggest either detractors or the biggest things towards efficiency. So we'll look at certain behaviors of the homeowner, and we can maybe adjust those to reduce some of their utility usage rates. Pollutant sources, we're looking at certain health and safety checks when we do an audit on the house. Energy sources, are you using electricity, are you using gas, propane, heating oil, whatever it might be. And then the environment, where the house is. Is it on a huge hill with tons of sun exposure and lots of wind? Is it in surrounded by shade trees? Is it in the middle of the UP? Is it in Arizona? I mean, all these things make a huge difference into how we're going to approach making this home more energy efficient. So all of these things we take into consideration when we're trying to evaluate the performance of the house, and then how we can go forward and make the house perform better. So the laws of thermodynamics. These two laws really are in play all throughout the house and are really what we're looking at when we're evaluating a house in one form or another. The first law just states that energy is neither created or destroyed, it's transferred. It goes from place to place and can change forms. The second law deals with energy moving naturally from areas of high concentration to low concentration. And we'll see this throughout the house. And so why is this important? You'll find out, and are we in high school? No, but I hope you paid attention, because we will be having a test after the presentation. So this is just a quick example of thermodynamics in action. This is a diagram of a typical 80% efficient furnace. And there's many different examples of different types of energy transferred between the natural gas coming in, there's potential energy in the natural gas. After combustion, it's transferred to heat energy. You have it going through the heat exchanger with the air passing through the heat exchanger, picking up that heat energy. You have the blower motor creating this, low pressure here, high pressure there, so it's naturally flowing through the registers, trying to equalize the pressure for that, going from areas of high pressure to low pressure. So in this one small system in your home, there's, countless examples of this, and throughout the house, there's examples of all this, those different laws in action. So just a quick, summary there. So we talk about heat transfer, and when you're thinking about heat transfer in the home, one of the things that we're trying to do is reduce that heat transfer, and that's done with insulation. So just to give you a quick background, I'll talk about R value and U value, and that's just reducing this thermal transfer in the house. So R value, you hear people say I have R19, R49, R this, R that. What does it really mean? R value really is just a measured resistance to thermal transfer of a certain material. That's what that R stands for. And then commonly you'll see, on insulation, it'll say R19 or R49. Whenever we do an attic for the Consumer's Energy Program, we have to insulate to a minimum of R49. The number after the R simply stands for a time value for the resistance of heat transfer through the material. So when they measure R value, you have an X amount of heat, and they measure that same amount of heat for each application. So let's say we have an R19 fiberglass bad insulation. It'll take this set amount of heat 19 minutes to transfer through this insulation, and with the R49, that same amount of heat will take 49 minutes to transfer through that insulation. So obviously, the more higher R value you have in your attic, the longer you're holding on to your heat, the less your furnace is running, lower bills, etc. So, the higher the number, really the better in most cases. Inversely, with just quickly too, because you'll hear this sometimes with U factor or U value. That's how they measure the window's thermal resistance, and U value is simply the inverse of R. U just equals 1 over R. So with R value, you want high R value. U value measures how fast energy transfers through the glass, so you want low value. So the Consumer's Energy Program, all windows must have a U factor or U value of 0.36 or less. So the lower the U value, the better with windows. So you hear these terms thrown around a lot, so I figured we'd just give you some clarity there. So again, this insulation makes up the thermal boundary of your home. And so the thermal boundary, in combination with an effective air barrier, is really what's going to keep the conditioned air inside your home and have a nice even temperature throughout the house. And that's what you really want. That's what's going to reduce that energy transfer, that flow of pressure out of the house, and those laws of thermodynamics, in action. You want to try to control those as best as possible. So, you want a defined thermal boundary and air barrier. However, in most homes, we'll find things like this. You can't really see, but this is in a crawl space. It looks a lot better on the screen. This crawl space was a mess. The insulation, there was no vapor barrier in the basement. The insulation's falling. There's no vapor barrier. There's no air barrier. I mean, there is no barrier whatsoever. Poorly installed insulation. This is a really nice home where this photo was taken. And I know the homeowner paid a lot of money to have this builder build it, but they had no concept of how to define the thermal boundary. So they just had insulation all over the place. It was crazy. You can't see here, but this photo shows no insulation. This is in the attic cap of a bungalow in Royal Oak, and they just had absolutely zero insulation, which obviously is not good. So how do we fix it? We'll get to that in just a second. So the second killer of home efficiency, we're talking about pressure flows, is air leakage. And so we're talking about air coming into the home and out of the home in an uncontrolled fashion. Infiltration and exfiltration. So again, you want a good pressure boundary in the home to make sure that you're retaining, you're paying to create this heat, you want to retain it for as long as possible and to maintain a certain comfort level in the home. So the majority of homes that we test leak 2 to 3 times as much air as they should. We get the question commonly, well, isn't my home supposed to breathe? I don't want to seal it up too tight. The fact of the matter is that we could come into your house and try to seal every single nook and cranny, and just the way homes have been built in the last 50, 60 years, there's no way it'll be too tight. In most cases, some newer homes, if there's an emphasis placed on air sealing and things like that, then that could be a problem. But in most existing construction in the housing stock we have here, we hardly ever run into that issue. So some common air leakage points, and I'll come back to this diagram, but when we're talking about air leakage, the biggest thing in play, and we see this in every single house that we're in, and this is kind of affect how we try to approach the air sealing and insulating of the house. We have this principle called stack effect, and it's essentially when you heat your home, you think of it like a hot air balloon. When you heat a hot air balloon, it builds up pressure, wants to rise and float away. Same thing happens when you're running your furnace in your house. You're heating that air, it's building up pressure, it's going to rise, but your home will not float away. The air will find pathways out. There's hundreds of tiny cracks all over the home. You know, recessed lights, drop soffits, your attic hatch, plugs, door trim, everywhere that air is going to escape. And when it escapes out of the top, it creates a low pressure zone in the basement. It sucks that air up and out, so it's creating a low, negative pressure in the basement. So in the lowest part of your home, it's going to suck that air in from any point that it can. So if you think of your house almost like a large chimney, essentially, when you burn wood in a chimney that sucks air in, goes out the top. Same thing happens here. This next diagram shows it. You have this air heating, building pressure, it's escaping out the top, creating negative pressure, and sucks in, and it just kind of circulates. And this is what we're trying to eliminate when we're looking at air leakage. So we'll go back to this this diagram. So this is effectively what it's showing. The air will leak out of, like it's showing, attic hatch, duct penetrations, recessed lights are always killers. It's like having a 6-inch hole in your ceiling. Drop soffits, all these different areas, the air is leaking out, and then in the lowest point in the basement, the rim joist, that basement bond area, there's a million penetrations from electrical, gas lines, plumbing, spigots going outside. That air is going to pour in, and it's just like a non-stop cycle. You're paying to create the heat, and it's flying out of the second story, and unconditioned air is being pulled into your basement. So this essentially is what we're trying to eliminate. And again, this has that thermodynamic principle. There's high pressure, low pressure, it's going all over the place, and we're trying to eliminate it. Let's see here. So because of stack effect, we're trying to air seal the top and the bottom of the home to reduce that air leakage. So how do we figure out exactly where all this stuff is taking place? We use a test called the energy audit. It's a comprehensive test that we do on the home that looks at all different areas of the home. We do a number of diagnostic tests in the home, including a blower door test, which is essentially like a pressure test in the home, thermal imaging, and this CAS test, which is the combustion appliance zone test. But before we do any testing, we'll always sit down with the homeowner. The homeowner lives there. You know where the cold areas are. You have cold feet walking around the floor. You're able to point us in the right direction initially. We'll do a complete visual inspection, so we'll crawl around the attic, we're down in the basement, we're all the way around the outside, looking for signs of inefficiency, and then we'll also analyze your utility bills. So right away, if we look at someone's bill and it's 1,200 square foot house and they're paying $800 in the middle of February, something's going on. So those are easy things that'll tip us off right away. So this is the blower door test. I know Todd and Mike, they've had this test done on their personal home and a couple rental properties. But essentially, how many people have ever seen one of these in action before? Come on, Mike. There you go. Don't be shy. So essentially what's happening here is this is one of our auditors. He's got the door open, and then this frame we fit to size any door, really. And then we put this canvas on. This is a large fan that fits in the bottom here, and it's hooked up to this computer. And we enter a lot of data about your home into this computer, the square footage, the layout, the actual volume of your home. So this computer knows how big the house is testing. This fan turns on and it blows the air out of your house. So if we had it hooked up to this door over here, it'd be blowing the air out of the home and it'd create negative pressure in the space, and it sucks air in through all the air leaks, which does two things. One, we're then able to isolate all the air leaks and figure out, this recessed light is leaking, this plug is leaking air, all those types of things, so we can then address it. And then also, this computer will be able to calculate exactly how much air leakage there is. So it'll tell us, for this size square footage home, combining all the air leakage that this machine is picking up, you have the equivalent of a 3 square foot hole running through the center of your house. And that's not uncommon. It's not uncommon. I mean, again, we'll run this test and we calculate what's called we'll calculate the BAS. This is the building airflow standard. And that's based on the square footage of your home. This is the healthy amount of air that should be flowing through it. So, we'll calculate this number and the amount of cubic feet per minute that should be flowing through this fan during the test. While we test it, it's typically 1.5 times to 2 times is average. And we've had as high as 3 or 4. I was in a house today, it had over 4 times the amount of air. So that's you're feeling 4 times as many drafts, your furnace is running 4 times as much as it should. Not a good scenario. So this test really gives us a great idea as to how the home is performing, and it's a great tool to figure out, exactly where the air leakage points are. So while this fan is running and all the air is pouring into your house, we use thermal image cameras to figure out exactly, where the stuff is coming from. So in a vaulted ceiling, if you have a light, you're not going to be able to go up there and feel whether or not it's leaking air. You can shine a camera on it and see in the middle of summer you have 120-degree air pouring into your attic, or pouring in from your attic, or in the wintertime the inverse is happening and you're losing your heat. So these are really effective tools at diagnosing all the problems in the home. So here's just a couple examples. Again, I mentioned recessed lights. Again, during the audit, the inverse is happening from that stack effect. We're sucking the air in at the highest point. So here, this is during the summertime. You have like 74-degree air pouring in from the attic space. Well, in the wintertime, the opposite is happening. You're just losing, you're hemorrhaging heat out of these recessed lights all over your house and other points in the home. So again, here's another example. Just a random cavity with no insulation, and it's not a cold air return. It was just, it is. We find stuff like this all the time. It goes totally unnoticed. The CAS test. This is more of a health and safety measure against the combustion appliance zone test. We test all of the combustion appliances in the house. So anything burning natural gas. So that's your water heater, your furnace. Even if you have a range that uses natural gas, we test that to make sure it's not producing too much carbon monoxide. So one of the biggest things we'll do is that they'll test the exhaust from your furnace to test the carbon monoxide emissions in the exhaust, and if there's acceptable ranges, and if it's burning too high on certain levels, then we'll know there's some sort of inefficiency. The burner's not burning cleanly, needs a tune-up or something like that. So it's a good indication as to how your mechanicals are running. So once the audit is completed, the biggest thing about the audit is that it's not there just to give you this pile of stuff to do, or this list of problems, say good luck. It's supposed to give you a prioritized, actionable list. So, your attic has not enough insulation. Here's what you need to do. Your home's leaking too much air. You need to caulk around your windows. You need to foam your plugs. You need to seal your recessed lights. It gives you a step-by-step guide as to how to fix your home. Leaving the homeowner with the problems, without any help going forward, is not what we're looking to do. So once we figure out what's wrong, we have the list, we'll sit down, we take a look at it, and here's the most common improvements. So insulation and air sealing, we do in pretty much every house. Most homes, again, leak too much air, and most homes are under-insulated in one shape or form. Second, updating mechanicals, and that's not all, typically it's not replacement, it's mostly tune-ups. A lot of people don't do preventative maintenance on their heating and cooling units, so we'll do a lot of tune-ups. Upgrading lighting, that's really easy. Homeowners can do that, but they don't think to do it a lot of times when CFL bulbs are really cheap, and you can run 4 CFL bulbs for the cost of 1 incandescent bulb. So, and then upgrading windows also is another one that we do, not as frequently just because they have a really long payback period, because windows are expensive, but it's obviously a good upgrade. So let's take a look at some of the improvements. One, obviously insulation. Cellulose we use 99% of the time. It's less expensive than fiberglass. It does a great job of insulating. It's easy to apply, and it's gonna give you a great R value per inch. And it's an environmentally friendly product. It's made essentially of shredded newspaper. It's all old paper products, and then it's just treated to be mold and fire resistant. So it's made of recycled materials. It's gonna help you save energy. It's good all around. But we don't just do attic insulation here. Oh crap, you can't see. You can't really see too well in this photo, but we do it sometimes. We work a lot of times, actually more recently, with renovators. If you're doing a remodeling project, it's a perfect time to insulate the home really well. We do what's called super insulating, and this is a picture of the same area of the house at different phases. This is an open wall, and then what we do is we spray foam, we skim the exterior wall, because spray foam insulation is expensive. To fill a 2x4 cavity all the way around the house, especially in this house, is a larger house, like 6,000 square feet. This guy was going to blow 40 grand in insulation and spray foam. But people see, actually that's actually a pet peeve I want to mention. People see homes on homes, they just go crazy with the spray foam. He spray foams everything, and they don't realize to spray foam, a 1,600 square foot bungalow with all spray foam literally would cost that person like 20 grand. It's insane. So what we do is we'll use 1 inch of closed cell spray foam just to air seal, because that's the big benefit from spray foam is the air sealing. And then at the end here, we'll put fiberglass bat in to get the R value. So that way you're getting best of both worlds and you're getting a cost-effective solution. Another thing, air sealing. There's a couple examples we have. You'd be amazed what you can do with the tube of caulk. Trimming. You can see the thermal image photo. This is a photo of the window. People always call us because they think the windows are leaking air. 99%, well, like 80% of the time, it's leaking around the window. The window will seal just fine, and it's just, when they install the window, they packed with fiberglass around the outside, and the fiberglass doesn't stop any air movement. So the air is just dumping around the window trim. So going around sealing the window trim will save you 10 to 15% on those air leakage numbers. The basement bond area, this is a thermal image shot of rim joist where your house sits in the foundation. Believe it or not, there's fiberglass in here. And again, fiberglass stops no air movement whatsoever. Fiberglass is a filter, and people use it a lot. If you have a penetration in your basement, or cram it full of fiberglass, all you're doing is now filtering the cold air that's leaking into your house. So, and I should have put a photo of that, but when we go through, we'll remove this fiberglass and then we apply the spray foam insulation. You pull out these sections of fiberglass and they're black because that's how much air is just flying through there all the time. That air is being pulled through that basement area, almost perpetually throughout the house. So we'll remove that and we'll apply spray foam and it air seals it. And then spray foam has an R7 per inch, which is higher than any other insulating material. So then you're getting a great insulation value, and then you're also sealing it really well. And then how many people have seen one of these in Detroit? I know you've had to see some of these in Pytiak. So going from something like this, or even an old 10, 15-year furnace, to something new, to a high efficient furnace. They have these new ECM motors that use probably 25% the amount of electricity as the old motors. I mean, it's a major efficiency upgrade, and again, there's rebates for it, so it's definitely a worthwhile investment. And it's something as easy as switching lighting. I mean, you can see these are all equivalents to each other. They produce the same amount of light. One uses 40 watts, CFL uses 11 watts, and LED uses 4 watts. So you do the math. I mean, you can run 10 LED lights at the cost of running one incandescent bulb. I mean, they do cost a little bit more, but when you really figure out the payback, it really does make sense over the long run. And then lastly, the window replacement. I mean, we've all seen windows like this with seal failure. This one actually got painted on because the painter wasn't too careful on the exterior. So we rip it out, and there's a nice new efficient vinyl window we've installed there. So once the energy audit is complete, and we've done any one of a number of these improvements, we actually do a retest on the house, and you're able to determine how much improvement you've made. For example, in Mike's house, if he doesn't mind me picking on him, his initial blower door test number was through the roof. It was really leaky. We had I think still to date, the largest improvement ever. Yeah, I mean, it was give him a round of applause, thanks. I think it was almost like 60% or something like that. It was insane. We did a lot of air sealing there, but we're able to quantify the amount of improvement you've made. We're not just saying, oh, we think we improved it a lot. We can say that we've reduced the air leakage amount by 37%. We've increased your R value by X amount. We know exactly how much better your home is doing. And this is something that's good for rental properties, because you can market the fact that this home has gone through the Energy Star program, and you have quantifiable results as to how efficient this home exactly is.
What's the ROI?
What's that?
What's the ROI?
Well, we'll get to that in here. So let's see. So again, by doing this testing and retesting, it makes you eligible for Consumers Energy and DTE cash rebates. So especially for you guys that are doing flips, or you're buying homes and renovating them, there's lots of cash available for you guys to, if you have to do these improvements anyways, you might as well get free money from your utility. So we, Green Home Energy, we're a trade ally in the Consumers Energy and DTE Home Performance with Energy Star programs. So they have an upper limit of $5,000 in cash rebates that you can get for any one of those improvements we listed. There's all money available for them. So once we're done with the testing and retesting the improvements, you get a check in the mail. It's as easy as that. They don't care if it's a rental property. They don't care if it's a personal residence. They just want to make sure the homes in the grid are starting to use less energy. So in any way, shape, or form, it doesn't matter what type of home it is, doesn't matter who owns it, you can get the cash back for it. It's almost impossible to see, but this is the list. There's actually another page too from Consumers Energy of all the things that are on there. I can list them off later. This is DTE. DTE just revamped. The same company that's running the Consumers program just took over and redid the DTE program. So they just bumped up their rebates pretty considerably. So you guys that are doing rehabs in Detroit area, the previous program was not so great, but this one actually has a decent amount of cash available. The other thing is, unfortunately, this is only for personal residences. It's not for rehabs on rental properties. There's Michigan Saves financing. You can finance anything that's energy efficient. That includes Energy Star appliances. You can finance an Energy Star toaster if you wanted to, just about anything, up to $20,000. So on a typical home, you can probably just do just about everything from windows, insulation, new mechanicals, finance it, and they are very flexible as far as repayment and everything like that. And you're able to apply your rebate money towards the repayment of your loan. So we'll give you a sample project, and I had a previous one in here, but then we just wrapped up. We did this house Monday and retested it this morning. So this is a home in West Bloomfield, just to give you guys an idea of what a typical project looks like for us. This one was a great example just because there was a lot of stuff that we did to this home. Let's see. After the audit results, this is what we came up with. That blower door test, we calculated that BAS, or that building airflow standard number, based on the square footage of the house. We're supposed to have 2,345 cubic feet per minute of air flowing through the fan. As tested, we had 4,824. So we're more than double the amount of air flowing through the house than we're supposed to. The attic insulation, even though this house was probably built in the early 80s, had about, I'd say, 4 inches of loose blown fiberglass, which is next to nothing. So they had R13 in the attic when we're supposed to be at R49 to 60 in our climate zone. The basement bond rim joist area had nothing, no insulation. It had this massive whole house fan on the second story, which was non-functioning. The window trim and everything was leaking like crazy, and then the furnace itself was burning a lot more carbon monoxide than it was supposed to. So we got it for furnace tune-up. So what we did, we had miscellaneous air sealing, so we sealed the top plates in the home. We removed the whole house fan. We caulked around all the door and window trims, spray foamed the bonds. We applied an R38 in the attic space, and we got a consumer's furnace tune-up for the furnace. I got 2 photos. One, this is top plate sealing. I don't know if you guys can really see what's going on here, but this is in the attic looking down at the top of a framed wall. So you're looking at the top stud of a framed wall here. And what we find a lot of times is that air, you can see this massive gap. This is a really good example. This is the drywall of that wall. There's a gap between the stud and the framed wall and the drywall. And when we do thermal imaging, lots of times we'll see air just flying in and out of outside walls. So with that stack effect, there's actually air being sucked from your basement through pathways, from the first and second story all the way out of your attic. So then we take spray foam insulation, we'll foam seal these areas, and here you have an electrical penetration, which this probably runs all the way down the basement. So the air can follow that all the way out to the attic. So we foam seal all this stuff. And then the whole house fan. I don't know if you guys come across these frequently or not. Some people are huge fans of them. From an efficiency standpoint, they're a killer, and people are like, well, I don't run my AC when I run it. So people will run their whole house fan like 6 days out of the year, and the other 360 days a year. This thing is just killing the energy efficiency of the house. Those metal louvers are not airtight, and they turn into a massive radiator in the summertime. When your attic's 140 degrees, those louvers will be 100 degrees plus, and in the wintertime, the heat is just flying out there constantly. So any energy savings you get from running that as opposed to your AC like maybe a week out of the year is completely negated by the heat loss and heat gain that goes on here all the time. So we just rip it out, drywall, and then obviously we mud, tape, sand, and finished it. But you'll get a massive air leakage reduction by doing one of these. So we'll break down the cost and see what it came to. So this project in particular came out to $3,075. And since they got such a massive air leakage reduction because they had a huge whole house fan and all the air sealing, they had a 51% air leakage reduction, which that's pretty huge. We don't typically get that high, but this is a great example. So since they had such a high air leakage reduction, they're getting $1,175 back in consumers' energy, making the total out-of-pocket cost $1,900. So consumers gives us this energy modeling software where we plug in the original state of the home, the new state of the home now that we've improved it, and this is the numbers that it crunched for us. So the estimated annual utility savings came out to $361.90, making the payback period 5.25 years, which is really quick. Most paybacks they average between 5 and 7 years, but when you're getting close to 5 years, that's a really great return. And then your annual return on investment is 19%. So, when you can invest $1,900 somewhere and get 19% on it, it's not too bad. So, going forward, this guy can, obviously he's increased the efficiency dramatically in his home. He's reduced that air leakage, increased the thermal value. and he's going to be doing a lot better from an efficiency standpoint. Also, he can expect, that's what I think it was predicted as bills, I forget what the exact figure was, it's upwards of like 26 or 7% or something like that. So he's going to see a massive reduction in his yearly heating and cooling costs, and it's going to be saving all around. And then obviously being comfortable. That's the one intangible thing here, is that he's not going to be sweating when he's trying to go to sleep in the second story and freezing cold in the wintertime. So, why go through this process on your rentals? There's a couple different schools of thought, and it really kind of depends on how much you want to put into it. You can leverage it in a number of different ways. Obviously, when you can slap the utility company's name on it and put the Energy Star seals, and you get a certificate when you go through this program. If you can market that to potential homeowners, potential renters, the way Jeremy had mentioned, you got two identical houses for rent. One, you're going to pay through the nose in utility bills and be freezing cold. The other one is super efficient. You're going to have low bills. Which one are you going to choose? And I don't know, people can attest to this. I know in college I rented a home where me and my roommates kept the thermostat at like 60. I would sleep with a winter hat on, and I'd wake up in the morning and I could see my breath, in the morning, and our bills would still be like $500. So we didn't stay there for another year because I got an apartment that was smaller and easier to heat and cool. So obviously it kind of just depends on how much you're willing to market the fact that this is a green, energy efficient, comfortable property. And these are things that you have to stress when marketing the property and talking to tenants. Again, happy tenants lead to low turnover. And you might say, well, this is an additional cost, but what does 1 month or 2 months of an empty rental property cost you? So you got to think of it that way. At the end of the month, as Jeremy mentioned too in the advertisement for this event, when it comes down to it, I would imagine probably more in lower income areas, when it comes to the end of the month and you got a heat bill you have to pay to keep your heat on and your lights on, or you have to pay your landlord, which one are you going to pay? So you want to eliminate that scenario, and that's what doing this will do.
Well, I can tell you too, they will not turn down the thermostat. I sweat like in the jungles walking through naked in that house. And they will keep that, and they just won't pay it, or they'll pay only that. And then, at least in Detroit, they're not putting on a sweatshirt. Which means you're not getting paid.
Right. And then also I've seen other companies that have properties that they do this to all of their homes. They market the fact that they're a green property management company, and that's they have not a shtick, but that's the way they market it. And then lastly, you have peace of mind that you have happy tenants. I was talking to Todd about this. It's like, why would you prefer to have tenants that are miserable, that don't want to pay you? You have animosity between you and your tenants. This way everybody's happy, and then the stuff is done right, and then you have a solid rental property. And again, in order to realize higher rents and stuff, there must be, as I mentioned, you really got to emphasize it. You know what I mean? And that's what we've worked with a couple different people that have done that successfully, gained higher rents, and just stressing, comfort, affordability, energy efficiency. There are some people, it kind of depends on where you're marketing the property, but people do appreciate the green aspect of it. So let's see, and then also lastly, for people that are rehabbing properties, if you're doing flips, if you're purchasing a home that's in need of renovations, take advantage of free cash. It's actually not free. You've all paid into it. If you look on your consumer's bill, there's an energy efficiency fee they just started charging you about 5-6 years ago. And all that is that they knew that there was federal mandates by, I think it's like the year 2020, where they have certain caps in their carbon emissions, and they can't just keep burning more coal to meet the demand. So they knew they would have to there's no way they could meet that demand without exceeding it. So they're like, well, how are we going to get everybody to be more energy efficient? Say, we'll incentivize it. Where are we going to get the money? Oh, we'll just charge them and then pay them back. They are essentially just charging you a fee, tossing it into a pool, and then, now they're incentivizing. It isn't great they're giving out the money, but really, it's everybody's money. So if you're going through the process of replacing a window, doing a furnace, anything, all these things, air sealing, duct sealing, attic insulation, wall insulation, crawl space insulation, basement wall, floor insulation, rim joist, new furnace tune-ups, a boiler. You can get $2,000 for a high efficient boiler. That's the big ticket item. New AC, water heater, tankless water heater, windows, anything you can get free cash for. So in this case, it's like, why not get free money and then end up with all these perks in the back end? That's about it. Any questions?
I just want to back up. You called it an ECM, was an electronic control motor.
Yeah.
I put one of those in, and I verified it is right. And I measured it myself. I have an amp probe. I put it on. It was 16.4 amps. When on the old motor and the new motor, the ECM or the VFD, the frequency drive, it was like 3.8. So
Yeah.
it's like a 60-some% decrease in your energy. And that motor runs whether you're heating or cooling all the time. So
Right.
very significant. It was like $120 more than just a straight AC motor. It's a soft start, so you never hear it start. It just cranks up.
And they
highly
have,
recommend it.
if you get a new furnace with the ECM motor, they have a $100 credit. So you can get additional cash, for that ECM motor.
Are there time limits with those credits now, or they have scheduled expiration?
They've gone up and down. They started this program January of last year, and no one knew about it. So they had a certain amount of budget that they had to go through, or else they were going to reduce the budget for next year. So then they had all this excess cash coming at the end of the year, so they couldn't give money away fast enough. They were giving cash to us for doing projects. It was crazy. And then they got it going red hot, and then at the beginning of this year, they tore through 30% of their budget in the first 2 months of the year, so then they had to scale it back. So they've fluctuated a bit, but they assure us that they have chunks of cash allocated, I believe, until 2016. So that's what they've told us.
Do the consumers and DG?
Yeah, they both have a decent amount of cash here for at least the foreseeable future. And they're saying that both programs, consumers actually got Energy Star Partner of the Year, which is a really big deal. At least in their world. So they're getting a lot of publicity for it. The program's going really well. It's really effective, and because of that, I think they're going to probably extend it even further. So it should be here for the foreseeable future. Yeah.
Where I live, there's a lot of LP gas, big pigs out there, and everybody always complains about how high those are. So is there a better way, like if we were to build instead of in that area, instead of using LP gas, to use something different like the baseboard heating, or what's the best way to heat if LP is your
Yeah, I said geothermal, but that is, obviously can be pretty pricey. What I would recommend if you're building, if you're building out there, or if you have an existing home, really make the structure as efficient as possible, so that way you can use as little of that gas as humanly possible. If you're building a new home, coming into an existing structure and doing retrofits, there's only so much you can do without ripping stuff out, going crazy. There's obviously a cost to benefit ratio here. If you start ripping out drywall and doing all this stuff, the prices are going to go through the roof, and your payback's going to extend from 5.25 years to 15, 20 years, and then at that point it's a little too much. So if you're doing it from new construction, it's really easy to make the home, not really easy, but it's a lot easier than doing a retrofit to make it super efficient. You can build the home airtight almost, and then you use mechanicals to bring in the proper amount of fresh air that you need, which is really better than relying on random air leaks. But you can build the home super efficient and then use as little amount as possible. Really is.
So you do that for new homes?
Yeah, that's what that one photo. We've worked a lot with a lot of renovators in the area, because they're able to get their clients the rebate check, so the clients are happy, and then we come in and we consult and we do all the insulation and air sealing and all that kind of stuff. And then on new builds, we have like a new construction side to our business as well, where now you can quote a home to code, which you can build a house to code, get a C of O, next day we can come and test it and it'll fail, just because there's a huge difference between a house that's built to code and a house that you think, or that should perform the way you think it should. So we'll typically quote now with a standard code package, and then we'll have an efficiency package that'll be above and beyond what a typical code thing would be.
How much more do you think that's going to cost to go above and beyond, so you can say that your house is certified?
Well, there's different levels. Again, you could do all spray foam insulation and all your exterior walls, but again, that's going to get really expensive really fast. There's other ways just to air seal really easy, like that top plate sealing we were doing in that guy's attic. We had to first remove all of his insulation to find the top plates and dig around. When you're doing new construction, you can blow the attic glass, just spray foam it really. It couldn't be any easier at that point. You know what I mean? Same thing in basement bonds. You spray foam that quickly as you're doing new construction. Exterior outlets, you can spray foam that. You can do that stuff quickly, easily. It's a lot cheaper when you don't have hours of labor associated with digging through insulation and doing all this other stuff. So it's a lot. There's obviously varying levels of how you can go way over the deep end if you'd like, but there's ways that are really cost effective and will pay for themselves really quickly.
So in a way that's cost effective, what do you think that adds to the construction cost of a new home? Sort of using a common sense approach.
I say a common sense approach, maybe, it depends on the size of the home and what you're trying to do, but I'd say maybe like 10%. It wouldn't be astronomical, but again, most people that are building a home for themselves, you're probably not going to move anytime soon. So those things again would have a pretty short payback period.
In order to get the rebates, is it the homeowner's responsibility to contact utilities, or do you provide a paperwork package that you just send in?
What we do, we take care of all the paperwork for you. That's the way they have the program set up. So let's say you went through this whole process, we did the initial test, the improvements, then the retest. You just have to sign 2 forms, and then we get the information from your auditor on your retest and plug that in to calculate your rebate. We send it in, 6 to 8 weeks later you get a check in the mail. You don't have to deal with the utility. I think they realize that people just hate dealing with utility companies and made it so that you don't have to do it. So we try to make it as easy as possible for you.
Let's say in a 2,000 square foot house, what does an energy audit cost?
Anything up to 3,000 square feet. And again, to be clear, I should have mentioned that. We specialize in the improvements on the home. So we don't do the testing. There's kind of a conflict of interest there when, I'm standing here saying, oh, this is wrong, and so, oh, by the way, I can sell it to you, so
I can fix it.
Yeah, exactly. So what we did is we found, right now we're working with 2 or 3 auditors in the program that we found that do good work, that know what they're talking about, and we simply refer an auditor to you. So that way they come in, do an unbiased test on the home. So because of that, it varies, but I'd say on average, in general, anything up to 3,000 square feet, you're looking around $350. And then I'd say per 1,000 square feet above that, it's about an additional $100. And then once you're up over 6,000 square feet, the auditor is going to be there for the majority of the day, so you kind of have to do an estimate for anything really big. But we did. There's a 8,500 square foot house in Birmingham. We did. It cost the guy $700. But he's got an 8,500 square foot house in Birmingham. So
They probably afford it.
Yeah,
he can afford it.
Yeah.
So what do you think, or have you seen is the best way to heat a house? Is it the boiler, or like the most efficient way?
I think just for cost effectiveness, if you just get efficient mechanicals, I would say just your standard 95% efficient furnace combined with the proper levels of air sealing. That's the most cost effective way of doing it, really. Obviously geothermal is great, someone mentioned that, but you're looking at 35 grand plopping your heating coolant. Your heating bills are going to be next to nothing for eternity. But it's obviously you had that money to invest initially, but just getting efficient furnace and
even with the air testing and stuff like that, because they say with the allergens and stuff like that, if it were a boiler, is that blowing air?
Well,
you guys do the air testing.
Well, we don't typically do that during the energy audit. We don't test for any allergens and things like that. But newer furnaces that we have, there's all sorts of filters and UV lights that kill germs and bacteria and electrostatic filters, and there's all sorts of stuff that you can do to minimize them from a cost-effective standpoint.
Unless you have a dense thermal mass, hot air is always going to rise. And when it does, it's going to create a low pressure and suck air.
You're gonna get
Living in a welded capsule, you're not going to be long, like about 2 to 3 minutes. Air is important.
Right. Any other questions? Yeah.
What do you do to seal can light?
Ideally, if we can access it from the attic space, we have these. They have 2 different types. They have these. They all almost look like plastic trash cans, and there's a little notch that comes out from the electric cord that comes out of the can. You put it down, you foam it up to the essentially the drywall, on top of the drywall. But in most scenarios that won't work. So if a stud is too close or whatever, it's just. They try to sell those on TV. They do it on HGTV all the time. Like, oh, it's so easy. You put it on and it works like 10% of the time. So we have these flexible sleeves. They're like an airtight insulated sleeve. The same thing. So it's a lot easier to get down. It's you can get it into tight spaces. And same thing. We just adhere it to the drywall from above. And then if you had like a vaulted ceiling scenario where there's no access, we'll actually take the can, we'll take the trim off, and then you drop the can itself down through the hole. And you collapse the sleeve, you put it in there, and then you kind of, not inflate it, but spread it back out. It's not adhered to the drywall, so it's not 100%, but it does reduce the air leak pretty significantly. So depending on if we have access there or not, or access to the attic space, that's typically how we can do it. They have airtight, they call them airtight cans now. They're not 100% airtight. We've tested a couple homes that have had all airtight cans and still leak a little bit. And then you can do that in combination. They have these LED lights that are one solid piece that'll screw into the recessed light. And that's actually doing that in combination with those airtight cans is the best way.
What LED lights do you recommend for plugging into existing systems?
Just for, there's different types of like cam lights. If you ever have your
Well, it's like regular lights. I guess we have a few cam lights.
I mean, I couldn't really recommend a brand or a type, just really kind of, they do vary, fluctuate in price pretty significantly. So really whatever, I have two different types in my house. I have that Philips kind that, you see that it actually is yellow, it looks really weird. That one was on sale for like $11. I've had it, it works great, The light it produces is just like regular incandescent light, so that one works really well. And then, I actually got a sample of one is manufactured by this company called Cree, and it does really well. So I don't have any particular, manufacturer or anything that I can recommend.
Are the LEDs as sensitive to heat as CFLs?
No, and that's
We've got a couple rooms in our house that the CFLs blow out
Take
in
forever.
a month and a half.
Yeah. Really, CFL bulbs, the ones you flip it on, you're stumbling around in the dark for 5 minutes, and they finally warm up. Those, LED lights, it's like going from I don't know, 8-track to, I guess modernizing, going from CDs to MP3s. You're starting at the incandescent light is like the cassette tape, the CD is like the CFL, and then the LED is like an MP3. You know what I mean? Where the CD is almost like the CFL is almost like a stopgap measure because they can't figure out how to make the LED technology cheap enough yet. But it's really what it's going to be in the next 5 years because those CFL bulbs, they do have trace amounts of mercury in them. The lifespan is affected by how many times you cycle them on and off. The more you flip it on and off, the less it's gonna, the lifespan is gonna increase. And they're also really affected by temperature. Blow out quickly. Where the LED lights are not, you can sit there and flick it on for the next 10 years, and it's gonna last for 10 years.
Do LED lights blow out too?
No, it's a light emitting diode. It's not the same as that CFL is a miniature, one of those tube lights that you used to see.
So how did what fails on an LED light?
Well, there's like the igniter or whatever that excites the gas that makes the light in there, and I'm assuming it's that filament. I'm not a lighting expert, but I know that we've heard that pretty frequently. But that diode, the light emitting diode in LED is a lot more. There's less that can go wrong with it essentially. So
It's almost virtually bulletproof.
right.
That's what they said about the CFLs. They were $10 bulbs and they blew out in a month. And,
Yeah.
This isn't saving a hell of a lot of money when I'm
Right.
taking that $10 light bulb.
Right. Well, you can
All your
find.
savings.
It's worth if you can find those LED lights on sale. It's definitely worth it. Do I recommend spending $50 on an LED bulb? Probably not. But if you can find something on sale for $10, especially if you're in a high use area, if you hang out in your kitchen all the time, these lights are always on. Replace those first. Those are the ones that are going to save you the most. If you have a light in the corner that you flip on maybe once every month and a half or whatever, don't worry about it. But if you have super high use lighting, I'd recommend doing that first and then kind of make it from there.
Do they have good exterior LED lighting?
Yeah, they do. They can do floodlighting and all that kind of stuff.
Okay, I'll annoy you later.
Okay. Any other?
What do you have to say about wood frame sliding?
What's that?
Wood frame windows rather than the vinyl?
Well, the vinyl replacements we use, we have a foam insulated frame. So it's actually the R value of the frame itself is really high. It's just more efficient material than wood. Obviously wood aesthetically is nicer. You can stain it. It looks great.
Well, it's in place.
Oh, in place?
They're all really in.
Depends. If it's leaking a lot of air, there's things you can do to seal it up in the wintertime. Other than that, there's not too much you can do for it once it's put in the house.
What's that?
What's that?
are the things you can do with skylights to make them better?
Typically with skylights, we'll find that if the skylight is in itself leaking a lot of air, if it's sealed up, we'll find that the skylight shafts leading up to it, you'll stand under a skylight and you feel that draft on your shoulders all the time. We'll find that, they'll put the fiberglass insulation wrapping that exterior of that skylight shaft. We'll go up and look at it and all of it's fallen back. So essentially it's like a refrigerated chamber going up in your so we use that anytime you have a vertical wall like that, knee walls and bungalows or skylight shafts, we'll just put 2 to 3 inches of close cell spray foam. It insulates it perfectly, it seals it, and then you never have to deal with it falling or anything like that. And that way, if you can insulate all that, you're going to reduce a lot of the cold. So, what's going on there? Well, if you guys want to get in contact with me, we're on Facebook, so feel free to like our Facebook page. That's what I've gotten a hold of. That's what a couple people have gotten a hold of me initially. It was just through Facebook. You can check out our website. We're on Twitter, all those places.
I'll go ahead and I'll post all the information. Renegade Detroit page on Facebook. See, let's give Mark a big hand. I only have one source of contention about everything you put up. It assumes we know what's in the future. That's something always that pisses me off. How is it that natural gas gets cheaper every year, but prices keep going up? You don't know how much prices are going to go up. I think part of one of the problems is my meeting, so you got to listen to me. Part of one of the problems is supply versus demand. So that means in Michigan we have all this great fresh water. It's not very valuable because there's so much of it. It's not very valuable. What the hell kind of sense does that make? Does that make any sense at all? So when we're looking at these things, I think we should, first of all, the greenies are probably going to get us at some point in time. So start saving the dollars and doing everything now because, their idea of saving the world is going to be to tax the crap out of everything. But also, you don't know what the future cost of that energy is going to be. You don't know if an Enron is going to manipulate markets to get 30% spikes in a year. Well, you do know they're going to do it. So when you're thinking about it and you're looking at your cash on cash return, remember that once you do it, that's that much less cash going out every month for a very long period of time. That's going to help you do lots of things. Let's say you lose your job, there's a downturn in business, something like that. So when we're doing these cash on cash, one thing I know, it doesn't take in a lot of other things, human interactions, your life, things that can go wrong. Just basic security. If you've ever lived without electricity, like I have, you think about these things a little differently. So anyway, I just want to throw my little spin on it. It was a great presentation. I do appreciate it.
Can I take a picture while you guys are playing? Everybody wave. You gotta get on, man.
I gotta get in there.
Everybody wave and smile at the camera. 1, 2, 3. Sweet. You guys are all on Facebook.
Thank you. Really was here, boss. I was.
Yeah.
All right, well, that's it. If you're new, stick around. Introduce yourself to everybody.
Need a business card? I do.
We stay till like 9:30. So talk.
Sure.
You're not a state member or become a
I'm doing
member.
my first installation job myself.
Did you know your money?
Okay.
Right? So for the ceiling, this is all one floor rent. I could just put a standard R19, but I told the homeowner, he an investor, about doing R38, but his whole point, save money, save money, save money. But when I put the insulation over the bats on it, I could just, boom, boom, to the studs, right?
Because we talked about defining that thermal boundary. So there's existing insulation probably on the ceiling, right?
There's nothing there. There's no mold in there. So that's been good.
So what's going to happen is, your attic is ventilated to the exterior of the house, and you put that on, depending on what type of ventilation you have. I don't know, are the vents that either come to the home, or do you have soft vents that overhangs the vent down a peak? So what's going to happen is if you insulate the attic roof, or the roof, the actual roof, the ceiling, there's going to be tons of cold air in contact. It's going to be completely uninsulated. So we want to put that insulation where you're defining a thermal boundary. So that's going to be the ceiling. Because what's going to happen is the area you're going to clog any ventilation that you have in your attic is still going to get hot because that R19 isn't enough. You can put, if you want to just put 19, you put it on there, but you're going to want to put it on the ceiling, not on the deck. It's not going to be No, yeah, don't, because then it won't be overturned. But yeah, don't put it on the roof deck. You want to put it. Where is the house? Yeah. If you're just blowing 19, that's going to cost you like, I don't know, walking to it already. To get someone to go out to this, they're going to charge you about 25 square foot. So you got to blow 19 in the attic with that new sun. So you got to figure out is that what you know when the it's done right? You know, that's the other thing you have to be concerned about is the ventilation in the attic. You roll it out of the block to stop the attic, so the ventilation there is you can plug that up and you get more I mean, really, if you're just blowing a 19, the attic is not going to be that much. I mean, consumers, there is a rebate program that even if you don't do the test, it's a lot less than the rebates I mentioned. Youthful, well, if it's coming out of your pocket, well, you have to look at see how, because if it's coming out of your pocket.
Yeah, I've been, he's taking for installation for the job.
You would probably. Good luck to it. Yeah, no problem.
How does that work?
So they'll finance anything energy efficient. So any of the stuff we talked about, say we came in your home and did an audit on the house, and needs some installation, sprinkle in the basement, do it for the students, like that. We call in to the loan center and say, contractor, we've done an audit, we got a proposal, see if we got to review. Just talk to the phone, get your social security number, we'll get just some information that'll be able to review over the phone. And then the loan goes through the Michigan credit unions. And just depending on where you live, by the year's credit union, the only thing is that you have to join that credit union. It's typically a small fee. But otherwise, it's really easy. They'll send you a letter saying that you're approved for X amount. You can apply for the full 20 or let's say it probably costs like $800 or something. Say you got approved for $3,500. Give us a letter as well, record stating that you're intending on taking a loan as the mortgage done. They make it pretty simple. Yes. So it's not going to pull any of your home equity or anything like that. It's not too bad because what you can do is allow you to extend the loan term out to 10 years, no matter what the loan price is. So you can get a loan for $5,000, extend the loan term 10 years, and your payments will be $87 a month. People do this, and then you can just pay it. Let's say you want to pay it in 5 chunks of $800. They have no prepayment penalty, and then they know because a lot of people are in the consumer DTE programs. Say you make 2 months worth of payments, you get your rebate check, you can throw that on the principal, you get your tax return, and you pay the rest off. So so it makes it.
It's not as attractive as a loan. I mean, the rebates obviously are real attractive, but the loan is basically strictly just a loan, and it's at a 7% rate. It's not, you're not getting any bang for your buck because it's energy upgrade and improvement.
Right. Well, the benefit, a lot of people don't have the equity for it, so that's the benefit there. And the other thing too is lots of times when people get loans through credit unions or other loans they've gotten, at least that we've talked to them about, they're not as flexible as far as payment. They want to earn their interest, so they can't pay the loan back as fast.
Yeah, well, that's why I was just interested. I was interested in more cities and, loans like that. So, specifically, my mother, I don't think her house is paid for. She doesn't want to sell it. She's very here in Florida. She's thinking about, just staying with me for a month. They can have her private residence. She doesn't, she's older, so she doesn't want to sell the house. So I said, well,
I'll turn it into rental kind of properties. And, you know, 'cause it's a beautiful house, but it was windows a few years back, but it's a drafty old back page, you know, and I'm like, Mom, I can't rent this house, what you say, the rest, you know, so, you know, I get up there with her attic, she got 2 attics, one at either end of the house, you know, and 30 years and something with insulation, you know, and so I was thinking, boy, if there was some way that I could offset the capital outlay of bringing a house up to speed so that I could rent it.
Well, it's different, like if you're living in the house now. When we crunch the numbers, typically the amount of interest savings will pay the interest on it. You know what I mean? So it's really, or it really exceed it. So most of the time your cash flow is positive, and then you have all the benefits of that income. And then once you pay the loan off, whatever, you almost got money free. If you look at it that way,
Because I mean, the house physically, I could rent it. I know my business is because I know that house and I know what she pays for heat. You know, it was all I could do to get her to upgrade the windows.
Where's the house?
It's in Ontario.
Yeah, I mean, again, I should have mentioned to we come and give you, do a free evaluation and come check the house out. Consumers actually pays us to come to the house. So if you're a new official inspection. Yeah. Right. Yeah, it's true. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah.
I was afraid you were going to say that. Wood windows. You're checking news.
I haven't seen what you did here. I live in a 33-year-old home that I built, so I know it's something there. Do you have a card?
I do. I should have mentioned
Since I've lived there in the last 6 years, but I'm new doors, new windows, new siding. Redid the kitchen, redid the bathroom, all new wood floors. But I know I'm blowing out, running out of gas every winter. And I've got that
Looks like it's doing red light.
fiberglass.